Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hello again, this is episode 137 of the Near Memo with David, Mike, and me talking about all things local. And today we are going to be talking about Google Gemini, which was released yesterday. Also Google review inflation and LSA review abuses. So it's an all Google episode once again, which we never tire of. So David, you're going to lead off with Gemini. What's going on?
Sure. Well, there's a lot going on that I'm probably not fully equipped to speak to, but I will.
All right, speak to what you can.
One video that was making the rounds yesterday. I think you had passed it along via Cyrus Shepard, and it was one of the Gemini team members, a guy named Palash Nandi, sort of reviewing a single potential use case for Gemini as sort of a proof of concept of the kinds of things that it can do. And unlike so many of the sort of Bard, SGE, Bing GPT sort of demos, which I think have historically been totally unrealistic searches that almost no one will do. This was sort of an exercise where Palash was trying to get Gemini to help him plan his daughter's birthday party. And it was a very sort of engaging back and forth of, okay, well, what is she into? And I think he had mentioned that they wanted to do something outdoors and they wanted to involve animals. And it sort of took him on this sort of journey to get him to flesh out his ideas more about what he wanted. And then it would present actual ideas for party themes to him. And then it took him down he took it down another rabbit hole of like, okay, what kinds of accessories should we have at the party? And we need animal themed party, cupcake toppers and all this stuff. So anyway, it was a fairly reasonable use case as someone who, will probably be using Gemini to plan a kid's birthday party next year. I could relate to it as something that I might actually turn to a generative AI thing to help me with. That said, it was like a very, very in-depth, 3.5 minute demo of like this one exercise. And I kind of thought to myself, it was very fast, first of all, much faster than the typical SGE results seem to load. We don't know if that's the case or if this was sort of time condensed for the purposes of a demo.
They did announce a speed up, though.
Yes, they as part of it. Right. The other thing is he did a great job of sort of narrating the sort of how the answers got generated, not so much from an algorithmic standpoint, but just sort of a step-by-step process where
like a
Gemini is sort of creating a product requirements document for the answers that it's giving, which was really, really interesting and a great sort of illustration by Palash Nandi and the Google team. It was really, I think it was a very cool sort of exercise to take people through to try to explain, how some of the black box behind this. Not that it will really help us like figure out the algorithm, but it does help just sort of help us understand how these answers are getting generated. Anyway, all of that being said, I'm not sure how much use case this will. I think it will have some limited applicability for these kinds of exercises where you might be looking for sort of a roadmap to help you plan something. I can see it as a plug-in inside of a customer intelligence application or whatever. Like I definitely can see a lot of, sort of integrated use cases down the road. I think for us as SEOs, my biggest takeaway was just, hey, there's two big takeaways. Number one, this thing is really good at sort of helping the searcher facet their search or sort of refine their query, where today you have an idea that you're trying to get Google to help you with, and you might type something in. You're unsatisfied by the results, so you try something different. You're still unsatisfied by the results, so you try something different. I think that's a lot of what the zero-click searches are all about. It's just people not getting what they're looking for on that first go-round. And this was sort of a way to help searchers refine their queries, I thought, which you could definitely see sort of working its way into the main SERP. We've already seen Google starting to go down this route with some of their embedded sort of shopping filters down the left-hand rail on desktop, and then also some of the little sort of filter pills that you see across the top. So I think Google's already going in this direction. I can see Gemini sort of accelerating that with a lot of very custom prompts based on the searcher as well as the keyword that you're typing in. So I think that was a really interesting possible application. The other piece of this was a very different UI, and it seemed to be, I think even the title of this was Bespoke UI, the title of the sort of Gemini presentation. And I do think that you could see this sort of making its way into quote unquote traditional search results, where you're getting very, very different interfaces based on the type of query that you're putting in. Sort of like the, universal search on steroids, where you're getting local packs for some things, and you're getting, the sort of knowledge panels and the sort of, celebrity cards for other things. And like, we're already seeing that today. And this seems like it could go like even further, right? Where you have a different type of local pack for every single vertical, or for a huge chunk of verticals. Home services, gets one treatment, and low budget restaurants get another treatment, and high end restaurants get another treatment. You could definitely see the sort of unique visual aspects
and products
really playing, and for products, of course. So I just thought those are kind of my two big takeaways. Is just like, wow, we're about to see. I think we're going to see a sort of increase in the assistance that Google's trying to provide users refining their queries, which will also, I think, at least attempt to solve their sort of public perception about how crappy the results are getting. And then we're also going to see a sort of a plethora of new visual experiences coming to the SERP that are very much query and context dependent. So
that was the thing that was so interesting to me, was the different UI possibilities by vertical or by query. and I think it's definitely, SGE gives you a version of this today, and as you said, David, a lot of the modules, a lot of the cards, a lot of the different components of the SERP are trying to do this, disambiguate the query or give you different choices. Excuse me. And so I definitely think that this is the direction that Google's traditional search engine is going to go. Question is, how innovative will they be, and how will they continue to monetize it? Will they stuff these things full of ads? Will they push this as far? Will they push this in a really helpful direction for the user, given that advertising is a sort of countervailing force in their decision making?
The thing that I found interesting about this visual interface is they've been trying with many of these universal plugins, particularly in local, to create more image-heavy search results, and as a result have largely created a mishmash of complexity in the search results. And this allows them to sort of customize those presentation layers, like David said, on the fly, so they can bring in these Pinterest and Instagram competitors as a more natural part of search, as opposed to bolting it on the front end, which clearly they've been interested in trying to approach video and imagery this way, and they just have not come up with a great way to do it. This seems like it allows them to do it. The other point was one that David pointed out in his LinkedIn post, was just that Ben Thompson and Stratechery made, which is that, as we've always worried about what happens when Google sort of goes all in on themselves and ignores all of the outside world. And with AI, we're seeing the outside world becoming just more and more sort of garbage AI content. And Google may be forced to generate their own content as a response to that. And this solves, to some extent, that issue for Google, allows them to create largely their own unique content, which I thought was interesting. And the third point about it was just that SGE, the thesis we had about SGE was it was rushed out the door, wasn't even quite ready to be even a crappy early Google beta.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that thesis proved to be true. And what we're seeing now is something closer to what they really intended the search generative experience to be.
A lot of this has to do with PR, right? I mean, Google is under pressure to show investors and to show others that it is the leader. It is back in charge. Because I think there's been this kind of narrative ever since ChatGPT launched, that Google is kind of off balance and doing things in a slipshod way, and so on and so forth. And this is partly an attempt to rectify that narrative. Um, and some of the stuff that we saw, they released a whole bunch of videos demonstrating different capabilities of Gemini, some of which are very impressive. And a lot of what we saw was a mix of capabilities today and aspiration, right? So where things are going. There's a particular video, David, that you and I were talking about, showing real-time recognition of an image, a picture that somebody is drawing on a post-it note pad of a duck in water, and there's a kind of a voice track, which is presumably Gemini saying, recognizing the image, and then giving all kinds of information and context about ducks and different kinds of ducks and so on and so forth. And it's very impressive if you take it at face value, but it's totally staged, as many of Google's early product demos have been at Google I/O Duplex and its real-time translation, ear in the ear kind of thing that they showed a number of years ago. So, Google is trying to reclaim sort of PR momentum as well as, popular attention, because when you think of AI, it's synonymous with ChatGPT, not Bard, not Google at this point, and Google wants to sort of reclaim that. It's undoubtedly very capable, and it's going to be quite popular, and there'll be a lot of B2B use cases that I think that this will serve very well. The question is, what will the consumer experience be like? And I think if your thesis is correct, that this is the direction that SGE, you and Mike, just said, this is the direction SGE is going to take, and we're going to see these bespoke interfaces, and we're going to really see genuine conversational interaction, then that's really a good thing, and it can address my earlier criticism months and months ago that the UI just looks like Las Vegas now, or some just terrible unchecked kind of suburban development or something, and it's just a mess. And this can bring some greater coherence to it, hypothetically. All right, have we said all?
Those of you architecture aficionados like myself will be smirking at the mention of Las Vegas and the duck drawing, both being related to Gemini. Of course, then we have the decorated shed being the other sort of visual medium that's happening in Vegas. Long story there. Anyway, Greg, I did want to come back to your comment about ads. I saw a lot better potential for ads in yesterday's Gemini video than I have in SGE, frankly, where if Google is thinking about, Gemini's sort of initial use case, or one of the initial use cases being sort of this planning tool, right? That it's not just that it's sort of a series of connected searches as opposed to just an in and out kind of experience the way SGE is, that you can sort of, Google can sort of help people down the sort of transactional funnel as they take them through this experience. And so you do get a bunch of ads at the end when Google has already sort of helped you do all of this planning.
Yeah, so that would be great. In fact, if it holds like that, if it takes you from an informational to a transactional query, most queries are informational, and then at the end you're getting the ads that are genuinely relevant to your your search, then that's a better experience overall for sure, rather than getting 4 ads every single time you plug in a keyword.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.